Raiden wins. Raiden wins. Raiden wins.
Hey there YouTube, YT community, welcome to my channel. This is the Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection on the PS3, and it's basically the first three original Mortal Kombat games, except the third one. The third one isn't the original Mortal Kombat 3, but it's the ultimate version, which is by far the better version. So everybody says. To me, they're identical. I can't really tell the difference between them. But yeah, I must apologize for my voice. I'm probably sounding very nasally. It's because I've got a cold coming on. But I thought to myself, I'm not going to let this stop me from making a video about Mortal Kombat, the original Mortal Kombat. So yeah, as you can see on the screen, that this is actually running on the PlayStation 3, but via the Xbox One X. So what I mean by that is basically the Elgato capture card has some issues with the PlayStation 3. Well, actually it's the PlayStation 3. It's got this HDCP restriction and it's always on. So to capture gameplay you have to find ways around the HDCP2, and the way that I figured it out was via the Xbox One X's second HDMI input. So that's how I'm basically going about this. I just thought I'd mention that. Not that it's important, but yeah. So, but the game is actually running on the PlayStation 3. Now, what you get in this game is you get the original arcade version Mortal Kombat 1. You get the original, I'm assuming, arcade version of Mortal Kombat 2. And you get the ultimate version of Mortal Kombat 3. So as you can see that the visuals on these games are pretty close to the arcade versions, if not identical. I wouldn't really know because I'm not an expert in the arcade versions of these games. I mean, I've always actually mainly played the home versions or console versions, but I have tried the MAME arcade emulators, and yeah, these run pretty smooth, I must say. So in the Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection, they've given you some options to change the way how the game looks. You have the option of having the screen as standard or cabinet. You have the options of having the characters look, painted. You have two versions of painted, one smooth, one classic, and I think one is standard. Not really quite sure, but yeah, they've given you these options, and you can actually tweak how the game looks to your preferences. I mean, if you like the arcade cabinet look, complete with the scan lines, you can have that, or if you just want it standard, smooth, or cabinet look with smooth, basically whatever you prefer. Now, the one thing that really actually ruins all three games is, again, like every other version of Mortal Kombat that I've ever played, is the atrocious AI. What I mean by that is the AI is absolutely fucking pathetic. It guesses every move. You know, it's just really, OTT.
Zero wins.
And not actually, playing this game for a long time, it doesn't actually help. It can get quite infuriating, to be honest with you. But other than that, if you're a big fan of the original Mortal Kombat games and you want that arcade feel and look with near perfect arcade versions of games at home, then you couldn't do better than this. But unfortunately, I am not sure if if this version, this specific Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection package, bundle, whatever you want to call it, if it's available to purchase at the moment. I don't think you can actually buy this anymore from the PlayStation Store, and I'm not really sure about Steam. I'm not really a Steam player, but yeah. So this is Mortal Kombat 2 with the scan lines on, cabinet look, and you could say it looks pretty good. Given the fact that these games, were released back in the early 90s, 92, I think it was 93, can't really remember. But yeah, I mean, they still look good, and this package that was released, this bundle of the three games, I'd say they've done a really good job of kind of updating them to look as current as they did at the time when they were released. I mean, now they feel and look a bit dated compared to some of the things that are out there now. But yeah, back when this was new, it was pretty good. And I could say that all three games look really good. Now, talking about looks, visually these games look pretty spot on to the arcade versions or the arcade brethrens, and the sound is really good as well. It's spot on. All the dialogue, the special effects, the grunts, the sounds of punches, the sounds of victims of fatalities, all the characters own personal little voices, the special effects. It's pretty spot on, and to be honest with you, it actually sounds better than I actually remembered. Actually, it's spot on. Sound is spot on. So, even though all three versions of the games that are available in this collection are pretty spot on and quite close to the arcade versions, was actually a version of Mortal Kombat 2 that was available to pick up on the PlayStation 3 store. That was, well, what they did was they first put that out there, and me being a Mortal Kombat 2 fan, I picked that up because at the time I wasn't sure if these games were going to be available to buy and play and whatnot. I didn't have any MAME or any other way of accessing these games. So at the time, what they did was they released a standalone version of Mortal Kombat 2 on the PlayStation 3 store, and I picked that up. And then quite some time later down the line, they released the arcade collection, and comparing the two Mortal Kombats, comparing the two versions of Mortal Kombat 2, I would say that the standalone version of Mortal Kombat 2 is probably a little bit better than the version that is included in this collection. So if you were to put the two versions side by side, you wouldn't really be able to tell visually, but the sound on the standalone version is of better quality than the one that is included in this collection. Talking about sound, I would say out of the three games that are in this collection, the ultimate version of Mortal Kombat 3 probably has the best quality in sound. It really does, sound clear and clean and crisp. You can actually tell that this version of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 that was ported onto the PlayStation 3 was actually, you could say, pretty near arcade quality, visually and, audio wise, sound wise, or whatever, however you want to say it. Yeah, the ultimate version of Mortal Kombat 3 in this package is probably the best one out of the three. But then again, Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 are not that bad either. Now, personally, I've never actually really been a big fan of Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, Mortal Kombat Trilogy. There was a drastic change in gameplay, visuals, sound, and the general design and direction of the game was a lot different than the first two. The first two had a very Eastern, Oriental kind of look and, feel to them, and the sound was very sort of Eastern inspired. And between the two famous games of the time, Mortal Kombat was, obviously produced in the West. Street Fighter 2 was produced in the East. And when you compare both games, together, you could actually tell that the Street Fighter 2 creators were going for this Western kind of look and feel to the game, whereas the creators of Mortal Kombat gave the game a very Eastern, Oriental kind of look, feel, also the plot as well. Capcom, on the other hand, went for the upbeat music, the light, colourful, visuals, and it was very, it was Eastern, but it just felt like Mortal Kombat was more in line with the, Eastern feel. It had the Eastern type of soundtrack, the plot of revenge and a tournament taking place, which was obviously ripped straight out of, Enter the Dragon. And a lot of the characters were, very kind of familiar to, the audience back then. You've got Kano, who was obviously a rip-off Terminator. You've got Liu Kang, who is a rip-off Bruce Lee. You've got Sonya Blade, who's a rip-off Cynthia Rothrock. You've got the two ninjas who were just, rip-off of every ninja, that you can think of from, back in the late 80s, early 90s. Then you've got Johnny Cage, who's obviously supposed to be Van Damme from Bloodsport. And you've got Raiden, who is basically a rip-off of the Thunder guy from Big Trouble in Little China, you know, John Carpenter's movie. So yeah, it had this very Eastern feel to it, but come Mortal Kombat 3, they changed it, and you know, I mean, even though I'm not saying it's a bad game, I'm just saying it was a, you know, a very drastic change from the first two games. And at the time, you know, it was very exciting to see what they were going to actually do with, you know, with the franchise, and how they were going to, you know, progress, and it was really exciting. But when it came time to actually booting it up and playing it, it just did not feel like Mortal Kombat to me. I mean, I still played it. I played it to death, but and I did like it. I'm not saying I didn't like the game. The game was good. It had all the usual, you know, Mortal Kombat, you know, tricks up its sleeve, and more. You know, where you had fatalities, now you had, you know, you had fatalities in Mortal Kombat 1. In Mortal Kombat 2, they increased that to fatalities, friendships, and rivalities. And in Mortal Kombat 3, they went one step further and went completely ridiculous and bonkers with fatalities, friendships. I can't actually remember if there were rivalities, but there was a new thing called animalities and a new thing called brutalities, which was basically a rip-off from Killer Instinct's Ultra combos. But I mean, it worked, and you know, it made the game, you know, a little bit more fun to play, and you know, more things to discover. Back then, when these games were released, we didn't have Google, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have, you know, any of that. So we would get the information from some guy who's been, you know, playing it to death in the classroom, and he would tell you, oh, you know, there's a cheat, and this is how you do the fatality, and this is how you do the babality, and yeah, that's how it basically went back then. So yeah, I mean, I've never really personally been a fan of Mortal Kombat 3 and whatever came after that, all the way up until, I would say, maybe Mortal Kombat Deception, Armageddon, you know, that era. In between, I mean, I did get the games and I did play them, but they just didn't have that same feel and look and sound as the first two Mortal Kombat games. So that was basically the Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection running on the PlayStation 3. I'm Critical Q, signing off. Hope you guys enjoyed the video as much as I did making it. If you did, hit that like button. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Share if you can. Really helps small channels like myself grow. And if you didn't, then get yourselves down to the comment section. Let me know why. Maybe you've got some suggestions, some ideas. I'm always open to, you know, new suggestions and ideas. So yeah, hit me up. Get yourselves down into the comment section. And if it's nothing to do with that, then I would love for you guys to actually just, you know, comment down below. You know, who's your favorite character? What are the, you know, the memories of the early Mortal Kombat games? What characters stand out? Fatalities, etc., etc. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Well done. Superb.